is December 4th, and I'm going for a walk in the rain, so you guys get to watch me get soaked. So this is our trail. I don't come down here all that often, but it's pretty cool when I do.
Grim! Nefarious thought he heard a voice over the commotion, but his mind was all over the place, with all that was happening, and his head pounding unbearably. He had the urge to lash out and bite these men, but he was quickly running out of energy. His vision was fading. "Stop it! Leave him alone!" the familiar voice cried, and the punches slowly began to stop. "Well, if it isn't Loverboy's girlfriend," the man growled. "What do you think you're doing?" Katie shouted, though Nefarious sensed that she was afraid, even though he couldn't see her. "I'm teaching this mutt a lesson. He shouldn't stick his nose where it don't belong. And you shouldn't be doing such things. If you don't leave right now, I'll call my father." What's that supposed to mean? Nefarious thought, almost too exhausted to remain conscious. You're just going to make them angrier than they already are. But surprisingly, the men stepped back slightly at this. You wouldn't dare," the leader stuttered. "Oh, but I would." The men exchanged glances before taking off in the other direction, looking back to be sure they hadn't been followed before disappearing into some other alleyway. Nefarious gave a rattly sigh and closed his eyes, grimacing in pain. He heard footsteps and felt a slight breeze as Katie kneeled in front of him. Grim, are you all right? You're bleeding." "Yeah, I'm fine," he groaned, trying to open his eyes. "Don't you worry about me." "Those stupid jerks. They're always hanging around, causing mischief. I'd report them to my dad, but those three always manage to slip through our fingers." His vision slowly starting to clear, Nefarious watched Katie as she observed his wounds. "What's all this about your dad? Who is he?" "He's the chief of the local police," Katie laughed awkwardly as she tended to what wounds she could. "And everyone within a 10-mile radius knows I'm his daughter. I guess it means you are from out of town, huh?" "Yeah, I guess you'd say that." Nefarious's brow creased as his stomach twisted with nerves. Since her father worked with the police, it wasn't exactly safe for him to keep hanging out around her. But even when he tried to stay away, they always managed to run into one another. "Okay, well, that's all I can do for now," she sighed. "I'll have to fix up the rest once we get to my place." Nefarious's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" he stuttered. "Your place? No, I couldn't. Trust me, I'm just fine." He swayed slightly, suddenly feeling sick to his stomach. His head pounded persistently, but he wanted to be anywhere except in the house of the chief's daughter. "Are you kidding? You look like you're about to pass out," Katie scolded him. "Come on, can you stand?" "I think so," Nefarious grumbled, and was able to get to his feet with Katie's help. Though as soon as he did, he nearly collapsed on top of her. "Sorry." "See?" Katie sighed, helping to support his weight. "You're not fine." "No, really," Nefarious whispered, his eyes beginning to droop. "I'm fine. Just fine." Grim? The next time Nefarious opened his eyes, he was lying on a couch in his spotless apartment, with a damp cloth on his forehead. He removed the cloth from his face and set it on the coffee table beside him, before taking in his surroundings. A flat-screen TV, full kitchen and dining area, balcony, and a door that most likely led into a bedroom were what he noticed, as he tried to remember what had happened. Just as he recalled seeing her before he passed out, Katie walked into the room from seemingly out of nowhere, with a bowl and a glass of water. "Oh, you're awake," she said with a start. "I wasn't expecting you to be up for at least another half hour." She sat on the couch beside him and put her hand on his forehead. "That's interesting. Your fever's completely gone. I thought it was just 15 minutes ago that you were 102. She sighed and set the bowl and glass onto the coffee table as Nefarious sat up. "What's this?" he asked, his voice a bit raspy. "Well, I made you some soup. I figured you might be a bit hungry after what happened earlier." Nefarious blinked, remembering how he'd been beaten up on the street and rescued by Katie. How embarrassing, he thought with a groan. "You should eat it before it gets cold," she said just as the front door opened. A tall, rather tough-looking man walked in and raised an eyebrow at the boy. Nefarious' whole body froze up the moment he noticed the sheriff's uniform and badge. "Who's this?" the man asked, his voice seeming to echo through the entire building. Katie stood and grinned. "Hi, Dad. This is Grim. He was beaten up by that gang you've been after and he passed out. I thought I'd take care of him until he recovered." "That's my girl," the man chuckled, looking the boy over quickly. "Well, no wonder you were so easily beat up. You're all bones and skin, boy. You better gain some muscle if you want to survive in this town." "Thanks for the advice," Grim said, rolling his eyes obviously. "His fever has gone down, but I think you should stay the night just in case," Katie said with a nod. "Is that okay with you, Dad?" "I guess that's fine," he responded with a shrug as he began rummaging through the refrigerator. Nefarious began to tremble slightly at the idea of staying the night. They'd ask all kinds of questions, and he'd end up giving something away. "No, I can't," Grim stuttered. "I couldn't. I mean, I've already outstayed my welcome." "Nonsense. You're free to stay if you like," Katie's father said as he pulled out a leftover piece of pumpkin pie. "But you haven't eaten your soup. And what if your fever comes back?" Katie pouted. "I'll be fine," Grim assured her with an awkward smile as he stood and made his way towards the door. Though, just as he turned the knob, Katie grabbed his sleeve, pulling him back slightly. "Wait," she objected as he turned to face her. Whoa, déjà vu. "Could I at least walk you home? Wouldn't want those guys getting you again." After gazing at her for a long moment, Nefarious sighed and nodded. "Oh, fine. But only to the edge of town, all right?" "Sounds good to me." Katie smiled. "So where do you live, anyways?" Katie asked as they continued down the sidewalk. Fewer cars were traveling along this road as the sky had already begun to darken. "Well, for now I'm staying somewhere just outside town. It's nothing special, but I manage." "Do you stay with family?" Nefarious looked at her for a moment and then looked at his feet. "Nah, it's just me." "Really?" Katie said quietly, frowning slightly. "That must be lonely." Nefarious shrugged, and they were silent for the next few minutes. "Hey, Grim?" Katie asked without looking at him. Nefarious sighed, shaking his head. "You know you could just call me Nefarious, right?" She raised an eyebrow at this, looking at him. "Why should I call you that?" "Well, because it's my name." "It's more respectful to refer to someone by their last name." "Yes, but why respect me?" Katie gave him a stern look, as if she'd been offended by something. "Well, why shouldn't I?" Nefarious stopped in his tracks, his eyes focused on the concrete for a long moment before he spoke. "Because I'm not worth it." "What do you mean, not? I couldn't even defend myself," he growled slightly. "How could I ever protect you?" Katie seemed surprised by this statement. "Why would you ever need to protect me?" There was a long, awkward moment of silence, and thoughts seemed to become tangled in the heavy air. Nefarious' mouth ran dry as he felt the need to protect her. But why? He didn't even know why he felt that way. So how was he ever supposed to explain it to her? "Never mind," Nefarious sighed before continuing down the sidewalk. "I guess I don't mind if you just call me Grim." Katie watched him for a moment before shaking her head. After catching up with him, she focused on a point in front of her and stuck to it. "Anyways, back to what I wanted to ask." Nefarious' stomach twisted with nerves as a billion possible questions raged in his mind. What would she ask? What if she found out that he was living in an abandoned building? What if she... What was the whole deal with that dog the other day? His heart stopped for a moment as he heard the worst of all the questions escape from her mouth. How was he supposed to explain it to her? He didn't want to lie, but he couldn't tell her the truth either. "What dog?" Nefarious asked carefully. "The dog with blue eyes, just like yours." "Some dogs have blue eyes, you know." I know. "What, do you think I'm a dog or something?" Nefarious laughed, trying his best to hide his anxiety and racing pulse. "Well..." Katie looked down, tilting her head slightly before giving a laugh. "Yeah, I guess it doesn't make much sense, huh?" Nefarious began to relax, glad that she was so openly denying the fact that he could be a dog. After all, humans couldn't turn into dogs, right? Then again, was Nefarious even human at all? "Do you think I'd ever lie to you, Katie?" Nefarious sighed, giving a gentle smile. "Sorry, I guess I was jumping to conclusions," she chuckled, smiling awkwardly. "My dad would be disappointed in me." "How could he ever be disappointed in you?" Nefarious laughed with a wide smile as he regained his courage. "What do you mean?" Katie asked cluelessly, looking back at him. Nefarious continued to smile, as if the look was permanently stuck on his face. His worries began to melt away as he became absorbed in her beautiful eyes yet again. Well, because you're so smart, Nefarious explained in a soft voice. You're kind and gentle and pretty, too. Nefarious could only grin wider as he noticed Katie begin to blush. He must have been blushing as well, but he didn't care. All that mattered was that she was there with him. As long as she was there, everything would be fine. Are you flirting with me? Katie stuttered, looking away quickly to hide her blush. Why, do you want me to? Nefarious laughed, his smile widening even more. Was that even possible? What? No, I mean... Wait, what are you talking about? She squealed. As soon as she looked up, her eyes widened in terror. Grim, look out! Nefarious' smile began to fade, but his mind was all over the place. He couldn't concentrate, and his heart felt as if it would jump right out of his chest. Katie. Had she said something? The image of her terrified face finally registered in his mind, and his happiness quickly shattered. Look out? He turned to look over his shoulder just as something hard slammed into the back of his head with a loud crack. He gave a sharp yelp as he collapsed to the ground and lost consciousness. As soon as Nefarious regained consciousness, he snarled angrily to himself. Man, I've really got to stop passing out like this. He sat up immediately, remembering that Katie could be in danger, and simultaneously heard a scream. He bolted after it, ignoring the throbbing pain at the back of his head, and leapt into the alley from which the sound had come from. There, he saw Katie, surrounded by the 3 men that had beaten him up early that same day. It was dark, but Nefarious' eyes adjusted quickly, and he could see that the gang had taken her things and were now starting to shove her wallet, change, keys, and other things into their pockets. Well, you don't got much, but it'll have to do for now, the leader snorted with disgust. Oh, call my dad, Katie cried, trying to free herself from their grasp. No, you won't, one of the other men sneered, pulling her cell phone from her purse. Not without this. She continued to squirm and managed to kick the man in the knee, but it was no use. This only made him angrier, and he shoved his cell phone into his pocket before smacking her across the face. The hair on the back of Nefarious' neck bristled as he began to snarl, his heartbeat quickening rapidly. How dare he touch her? How dare he? You're an annoying little brat, aren't you? The leader grumbled, letting her fall to the ground. Knock her out, boys. We can't let the neighbors hear her screaming like that. Don't touch her! Nefarious roared, his muscles tensing as he felt his bones beginning to shift position. His head pounded like 1,000 drums as his heart nearly exploded within his chest. You lay another filthy hand on her and you'll regret it. Oh, look who it is. The damsel in distress? No, I think he's playing the hero this time. Nefarious' voice lowered dramatically as his pupils thinned, his fangs clearly visible now. The shadows played with the contours of his face, and he looked more like beast than man. His eyes seemed to glow savagely as the air around him seemed to burn with anger. A dangerous guttural growl formed deep in the pit of his stomach and erupted as he spoke, as if something was begging to escape. I'm warning you. The leader's stance faltered slightly, and Nefarious could sense the fear that had begun to settle in, taking control of the man's body. Within the man's eyes, Nefarious could see his own burning reflection, and it cast a heavy air of sheer terror throughout the alley. What are you gonna do? The leader sneered through his fear, despite his all-too-obvious trembling. Bite me?